Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about various reworks in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, where Creative Assembly did improve the races affected, but didn't quite finish the job. Didn't quite deliver what they should have. So starting off, let's talk about the Greenskins. The Greenskins did get an update to their research tree, and a very useful one, especially when we're talking about things like focusing on orcs or having various scrap upgrades far more widely available. That's great. They also changed the way unit recruitment works. They reduced the tiers of certain things, they reduced the hero recruitment tiers, and allowed you for a good number of heroes to increase their capacity at tier 3. It is a shame that it doesn't affect shamans and to some extent night goblin big bosses, but all the same, from that perspective, it is fairly solid. Sure, some people will talk about how Greenskins now have a far more limited recruitment capacity because previously their settlement buildings, minor and major ones, would increase local recruitment capacity. But I think it's great that they've moved the Greenskins away from spamming goblins early on for the most important portion of the campaign to being able to just play around with orcs fully. So you can go with orc spear boys, you can go with orc archers, big guns, black orcs, etc. That is good. Now, the problem, I would say, the big issue with regards to the Greenskin rework is the WA system. So the way the WA system works is that you fight battles, and then once you fill up the WA meter, you can declare a WA. Now, the problem with the way a WA works is you select the target with a WA, and you have 20 turns or so to deal with said target, to deal with the target's capital. Now, the benefits that you get from this, the kind of faction-wide reward you get from this, is dependent on the strength of the faction you're dealing with. But here's the problem. You can only have, unless you're abusing various things, you can only have one specific faction benefit from a WA. So it's best, for instance, to just go with dwarves. Get a WA on Zarnagrund because it is a very powerful faction from the beginning of a campaign. Declare a WA on them, deal with them, get that construction benefit in particular, and then just ignore everything else. On top of that, the WA duration is fairly long, and as a result of that, when you're in a WA, it's great. Every single one of your armies that you had pre-WA does get an additional WA army attached to it, but the problem is, one, it's kind of a one-note thing, because there's very few benefits in declaring multiple WAs in a campaign once you've gotten the specific reward that you want. On top of that, the actual rewards for completing a WA, which is perhaps important when we're talking about Gorbad Ironclaw because he gets extra rewards for completing a WA, but the rewards themselves are fairly mediocre. So you have something that lasts a long time, gives you a lot of benefits when it's happening, but not so many benefits when you do complete a WA. So I think that is one aspect where Creative Assembly could have improved it, the pacing, the rewards of it, be it the faction benefits or the various choices of a reward that you do get. Because in theory, you're supposed to get a lot of these WA mobs, but it's so limited in terms of the number of units you're getting, and you have to choose what you're going to get, that it ends up being pretty pointless. So that is where I think the Greenskins could have been much better handled in terms of dealing with the WA system and making that system more rewarding. Of course, it would also be great if Azag and Grimgor had their own unique faction mechanics. Mind you, Grimgor is, well, ridiculously powerful as is. I'm not sure he needs a unique faction mechanic. I mean, Grimgor's faction mechanic is he gets more Black Orc big bosses than everyone else, and he's Grimgor. But all the same, I think they could have done more things with regards to the Greenskins. They could have improved Grom's campaign, especially, I would argue, because Grom's campaign, he has a unique mechanic. It doesn't work especially well in Warhammer 3, and his entire campaign dynamic just doesn't work. So those are the kind of issues I would say still exist for Greenskin. Then we have Kislev. So with regards to Kislev, the new supporter system is a significant improvement because it's essentially a parallel research system that you have available in your campaign. Of course, there is a problem with regards to the supporter system in that, yes, it does incentivize you to fight chaos, which can be a bit of a problem for Stanka, assuming you're fighting a campaign in Nagron. But regardless of that, all the same, the problem of Kislev is not really with regards to supporters. It's a problem of Astankia, it's the problem of Kastaltin, it's the problem of Katrin. Their faction effects, their campaign mechanics, their campaign situation. Kislev itself as an area of the campaign map leaves a lot to be desired. So the way you gain supporters, especially for Katrin and Kastaltin, combined with the kind of choices they have to make, or lack thereof, in their campaign in terms of terrain, does affect them. And then you have the Ice Core training system. Yes, it can give you a lot of benefits in your campaign, but it's just not really that great of a system, because either you're spending multiple turns to recruit Ice Witches and Frost Maidens, or you're just bypassing it by using the load save character system. So either way, not a fantastic system, could have been handled better. I do think it is improved compared to where it was before, but there's still a lot of things left to be desired with regards to Kislev. And I would also say, very importantly, you know, Astanka's campaign just kind of sucks. Katrin's campaign, Kastaltin's campaign, they are not where they should be. And really crucially, I would say that Kislev not having an artillery choice until tier 4 is a significant downside in their campaigns. I mean, it's not necessarily that big of a downside when, you know, you can just recruit a bunch of Akshinas and Kassars and just kill everything in range units and sieges, but all the same, it is something of a problem from my point of view with regards to how Kislev ultimately ends up playing out on the campaign map. And then, here's the thing. On top of all of that, we also have to talk a bit about climate for a second. See, when you look at Katrin and Kastaltin, they don't have the same climate choices as Boris Ursus and Astankia, because Boris Ursus and Astankia have cast Wasteland as unpleasant as opposed to uninhabitable. They have Wasteland as being suitable as opposed to being unpleasant. And that just means that, well, really, when you add everything up together, Boris Ursus is the much better campaign. I mean, one could argue in favor of Astankia until you realize the kind of bullshit that Boris Ursus can do in his campaign from very early on. And yeah, I don't think there's even a contest. So that's kind of the problem, really, of Kislev, because you kind of have 1.5 campaigns. Like Boris Ursus, you have Astankia to a degree, only to a degree. But one, a lot of the Kislev campaigns feel very similar to one another, partly because of the size of Kislev, and yeah, Boris is just much better. Katrin and Kastaltin not worth playing from my view. I mean, you can obviously play them, but it's just like, you're still gonna deal with the same campaign area, you're still gonna deal with the same types of foes. Astankia has a choice of whether or not she wants to, and by the way, it's recommended that you do actually return to Kislev. But really, you don't have that kind of variety in campaigns. You don't have the variety of individual Legendary Lord mechanics, except Astankia and her campaign mechanic, it just doesn't work. So those are the kind of issues with regards to Kislev on top of the Ice Court situation. Finally, we have Nurgle. And really, the problems of Nurgle have existed since the launch of the game. They did improve it with Thrones of Decay, but not quite as much as they should have. So one of the problems is infections, really. You gain too few of them, and you're using them for practically everything in your campaign that is worth doing. So you're using infections for plagues, you're using them to be able to recruit different types of units, and you only gain so many of these infections from battle. Though, to be fair, the battle situation is not necessarily as big of a problem as the fact that you are not really gaining all that many from your settlements. I mean, eventually you do have enough that you don't really care, but you're using infections for two crucial things at the same time. One, you're using infections for the sake of your entire unit recruitment and also speeding up said unit recruitment. Your barracks take 4 turns to build by default, which is a really annoying thing to deal with in a Nurgle campaign. And then you also have the damn plague situation to contend with as well in your campaign. So it really is a very, very limiting and annoying and frustrating system to use the same resource for multiple things. And it's also unlocking certain research, and that's 200, 400, 400, if we're looking at it, 600 even. Yeah, it is a ridiculous amount of infections to be used. And again, you also have to use these things for plagues. What this ends up doing really is plagues are worthless. I'm not joking on this. Like, the whole point of Nurgle, the whole plague system is just a janky pile of rubbish. Because, one, they're very expensive in terms of plagues, even if you can reduce the cost. But because of the various AI benefits in terms of dealing with plagues on any difficulty, you create a situation where to have any kind of effectiveness with a plague against an opponent, you need to spend a lot of infections. And let me just tell you, this is better to focus on unit recruitment and research than it is to focus on plagues. So plagues don't end up working out. I mean, some of the positive ones, some of the positive effects, like extra growth, recruitment health for all units, all that kind of stuff, reducing upkeep, especially if you're talking about Kugaf, that can work out. But I would also emphasize that if you're interested in playing a plague campaign, the best choice really is Festus, because yes, he can only gain infections through battle, which whatever, it's like, okay, I get to fight battles and I get to get up to 100 infections. That is not a big problem. But he doesn't have to spend infections on research or structures. So Festus ends up being the best Nurgle campaign by far. I mean, Tamarkan is not really as much of a Nurgle campaign as he's kind of like a chieftain campaign, really, in his entire situation. That's the reason it works. Something else I would also say is that you have all of your damn heroes recruited from just 2 structures. That's fine, but and these structures are not going to cost you infections, but it's just kind of silly when you end up just spamming heroes without any restraint in a Nurgle campaign. You don't have so much of an army as you have a hero stack when you're playing a Nurgle campaign, and that does work. I'm not gonna say it doesn't, but it's still just one of those frustrating systems to deal with when you're talking about a Nurgle campaign overall. Epidemius and Kugaf just are flat not worth playing. I think they could have done better with regards to his campaigns, and it's not even necessarily the legendary lore. Like, Kugaf is really powerful. Epidemius has a great skill line, but it's just the plague system, the infection system, just various problems that Nurgle does end up having in the campaign. The ridiculous, stupid part of Nurgle is that every single Nurgle campaign is in a situation where they get to deal with one of the very few climates that actually hurts them, because the construction times, the plagues, etc., means that any kind of unpleasant climate does end up hurting Nurgle a lot. Now, this wouldn't be a problem, because Nurgle does have a lot of suitable climates, but the one climate they do not have suitable and is unpleasant, and the one they deal with a lot in every campaign, be it Tamarkan, Epidemius, or Kugaf, is Mountain. This is ridiculous, and it has been since Thrones of Decay came out. And yes, they should have improved it. Also, you should be able to achieve victory in a campaign by not just destroying certain factions, but by also being able to vassalize them, especially an issue in Tamarkan's campaign and also Epidemius' campaign. Less of an issue when we're talking about Kugaf from that point of view, obviously, because, you know, dealing with Gorst, whatever, dealing with Tzeentch, well, maybe Axial gets to deal with that, but still, just some nonsense with regards to the design over here of Nurgle. And that's all I had to say. Costin, signing out.